Evening. Good evening. Welcome to the Pulaski Street Church of Christ. We're thankful all of you are here tonight. For those of you that are watching online, we're thankful for your presence as well. Some prayer requests as we begin. Sutton Blackman, the daughter of McKenna Rose, had COVID a few weeks ago, and she's sick again with a double ear infection, and they would appreciate our prayers on behalf of Sutton. Eliana Espinoza is waiting on results from an MRI that she had on Monday related to her shoulder injury. Patrick Hughes will be having a nerve block for his back next Wednesday, September the 27th at Murray Regional. If this goes as planned, he will be able to schedule an ablation next. Lisa Parrish, who has been dealing with a lot of things for a long time, she was flown to Vanderbilt Sunday and was diagnosed with pneumonia and sepsis. She is very sick. She might have improved somewhat over the night into this morning, but it's kind of up and down when you got those kinds of situations going on, so we need to be keeping Lisa and Tony and the family in our prayers. Leon Patterson, who is the father of Mary and Isabel, will be having an angiogram tomorrow at the North Alabama Medical Center in Florence. Miriam would appreciate our prayers on behalf of her dad. Pam Snyder is struggling with pain management. If the pain is not resolved by the end of the month, they will be doing an MRI to check for any other issues that may be present after her surgery. Pam is not up for visitors at this time, but she would certainly appreciate cards and our prayers. So let's keep all of these in our prayers. We do continue to remember the family of Jean Bryant and extend them our sympathy and love. She was the sister-in-law of Barbara Sisk and the aunt of Steve Sisk. Funeral services were held this past Sunday. A few announcements. The Lions will be leaving for Rush at Freed Hardeman this Friday at 4:15 p.m. from the south parking lot. We will have a brief meeting about Rush for those of you going and parents down in the Lions Den after class this evening. But remember that you're going to need money for your dinner on Friday, any gas station stops and souvenirs, and a towel and bedding will be required as we will be staying out at Mid-South Youth Camp. Money for that trip, $30, is due tonight. This coming Sunday, September the 24th, we will have a 1 o'clock song service, so we look forward to that. There will also be a Lions activity this coming Sunday, the 24th, at the home of Brad and Emily Nilsson at 5:30 p.m., so make your plans to be there, 6th grade and up. This next Monday, September the 25th, there will be a Lambs activity in the fellowship building from 4 until 5:30. The Donnellys have a devotional games plan. There will be pizza there for anyone that does not want to eat at the fair. With that in mind, if you want to go to the fair together after the Lambs activity next Monday, we would love for you to. But we also want parents to have their own children there. So That's the deal. Unless you can arrange it with another parent that agrees to take your child, we're not taking a van full of lambs to the fair. We're not doing it. Like literal lambs or our children lambs. So, but when that activity is over, if you want to go to the fair and eat and go as a group, that will be great. And if you want to eat at the fair, you don't have to eat the pizza that's at the activity. But if you don't want to eat at the fair and want to eat pizza, fine. There you go. You got options. The seniors ministry will be having a biscuit and a Devo on Tuesday, September the 26th next week. That'll be at 9 o'clock in the fellowship building. And also, the building is reserved for a wedding this weekend on Friday and Saturday. And so a few people that know what they're doing. That's not me. They'll need to move this. I kind of know a little bit, but we need to make sure after everything is done in here that we get the podium moved, get the Lord's Supper table, and we get the steps out and get them put in here. So that'll need to be taking place after Bible class tonight. That's all the announcements that we have. Well, let's all stand up. Now, Daniel was was a guy that experienced a lot of cool things and some not so pleasant things in his life. But overall, was Daniel a good guy or bad guy? Good guy. Good guy, right? And we even sing a song about good old Daniel. But what happened to Daniel because of his goodness and his commitment to God? What did they decide to do? They set up a plan, right? They wanted him to die. And they were going to throw him in what? A lion's den. But what happened? He didn't, not yet. He did eventually, but not yet. So it stops. The lions shut their mouths, right? And then the ones that came up with the plot end up getting thrown in there, and all of a sudden the lions are real hungry again. Devoured them so quickly that they didn't even hit the floor of the pit. It's awesome. Y'all need to read that one again. There once was a man named Daniel, good old Daniel. He prayed to God 3 times a day. Good old Daniel. The king's decree said, worship me. Poor old Daniel. But Daniel would not bow the knee. Good old Daniel. And the gates went, and the locks went, and the lions began to roar! And the lions began to roar! But they couldn't eat him if they tried. Good old Daniel, because the Lord was on his side. Good old Daniel. Now, when Daniel was younger, here, y'all can have a seat, sorry. Y'all can have a seat. When Daniel was younger, he had this unpleasant thing happen in his life, and we'll leave it at that. But he gets taken from his home country into Babylon, and not pleasant things take place. But Daniel was supposed to be eating certain things that, because of his beliefs in the Mosaic law, he's like, these things are not okay for me. So what did Daniel choose to drink? Water. And what did Daniel eat? And fruits. And what happened to Daniel and his friends that ate that way in comparison to the rest of them? They were better. They were better. Amelia's not giving a chance to anybody tonight. So what the most important thing that I think we need to learn from that is not necessarily that one diet is better than another or one person can be better than someone else, but it's that when we commit ourselves completely to God, we find better results. Better results in life. And because of Daniel's consistent commitment to God, he keeps getting better results and better results. And he gets thrown into a lion's den, and what happens? They don't eat him. God kept giving Daniel better results because of how committed to God Daniel was. All right, we got a couple more songs that we are going to sing. Now, who can tell me one of the attributes that are part of the fruit of the Spirit? Raise your hand if you got one. Okay, one. Just one. Joy, okay? Love. Kindness, that's right. You don't have any? Peace. Okay, what we got? We got some back here. Faithfulness. Uh-huh. All right. Okay, so we got 9 of them, all right? 9. Got to hold up 2 hands for that. And where do we read about them? Do y'all remember what book of the Bible we read the fruit of the Spirit in? What, you remember it? Galatians chapter 5. All right. So now we're going to sing about them. We're only going to do 2. Okay? It's not an apple and it's not a banana. That's the 2 we're doing. The fruit of the Spirit's not an apple. What? Fruit of the Spirit's not an apple. What? If you want to be an apple, you might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit, because the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Galatians 5. Fruit of the Spirit's not a banana. Smush. Fruit of the Spirit's not a banana. Smush. If you want to be a banana, you might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit, because the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Galatians 5. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. At this time, you are dismissed to your classes.
Good evening. All right, I'll need some interaction for the first couple minutes. I'll repeat if nobody else can hear you. But tonight we are talking about the character of Jacob. So when you hear of Jacob in the Bible, what comes to mind for most of you? Which one? I can't hear. Jacob. What story comes to mind? Esau, Jacob and Esau. Anybody else a different one? The 12 tribes. Okay, anybody else? So typically, I would err on the side of Jacob and Esau. And I learned in studying this and trying to figure out what am I possibly going to talk about the character of Jacob. That focusing on that one probably, or not focusing, that's not the right word, because you're not focused on it. It's more that it's just what it's talked about a lot because of what happened. But I didn't realize how many good things that Jacob did, even with the thoughts that he had and the actions that he had in the instance, so the birthright, Jacob and Esau issue. And then we're going to talk about all of these, but we're going to try and talk about all of these. But in reading about him, it was interesting to me to find that there was so much more to his character than the thought I had was deceitfulness or mischievousness or the negative connotations, I guess, that come to mind when I think about him. So in Genesis, we'll be in Genesis chapters basically 25 and all the way through, I think the last one was in, I stopped at 33. So we're going to be bouncing through those as we go through this tonight. But so Jacob, also known as the son of Isaac, also known as the grandson of Abraham, son of Rebekah, brother to Esau. So The story of how he extorted his brother out of his birthright, and I use extorted very loosely there because, well, we'll get into that, but is usually the first story that comes to mind when someone thinks about him. And because of this, I believe Jacob is typically, he's labeled rather quickly as a troublemaker, as somebody that made some bad choices, mischievous, cunning brother that made that poor choice. Some might say that Jacob was tenacious, confident, more a go-getter. It depends on which story that you relate with him. So in Genesis 25, starting in verse 21, so 21 through 33, I will try not to read too fast, and I'll be reading from, if I can remember what mine, it's a New King James Version this time, instead of using my phone. So starting in verse 21, says, Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her, and she said, If all is well, why am I like this? So she went to inquire of the Lord. Note to self in this was, I'm envious of the relationship that most of these people have with God because, she went to inquire with God. Or even as Jacob, he makes these bad choices, we'll see how God interacts with him so frequently. And the Lord said to her, verse 23, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. It says, Now Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, Please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. Therefore his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, Well, sell me your birthright. And Esau said, Look, I'm about to die. So what is the birthright even to me? And Jacob said, Well, swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. So in the story that is typically in my head, it's this, dire need for food. I was talking with Jeanette about this, and that the Bible it says he was weary. To me, weary would mean he's tired, he's been out, he's been doing this, but it's not his first time. We know that it's not his first time doing this because it says he's a skillful hunter, so he's done it multiple times. But in this instance, he comes back and he's tired and he's hungry and he's willing to give up a birthright. So, he knew that he would be left with a portion of his father's material wealth by giving up his birthright. However, that would be all that he would receive. See, a birthright in biblical times, for those that don't know, was the inheritance that a father left for the eldest son, where the eldest would gain a double portion of whatever wealth the family accrued, and they would also gain then the authority of the father at the same time. So he still knows he's getting something, but he didn't care about that at the time. Any other siblings receive a single portion with no authority. So I'm sure that he felt some jealousy from this, he being Jacob. I could see, you have a child, let's see, make sure I don't get over my notes here, but no matter, the Bible says that Jacob was Rebekah's favorite and Esau was his father's favorite. So no matter who you are or what your status is in the family, we all long for our father's attention. Let's face it, we do. And in some way, we seek it in different manners. So holding Esau's birthright over his head for food, while seemingly harsh, and definitely not very brotherly, because he should have just fed him, was Jacob's way of getting closer to his father, in my opinion. It was a way of he's trying to get into that first place. Just a thought. Now, don't get me wrong, no way am I condoning the fact that Jacob did this, because once again, if you think about him as a brother, he should have fed him. Because we know the game that he brings in when he hunts is feeding the whole family. It's not just him. It's not like Jacob's over in the corner only eating what he grows and that kind of, it doesn't work that way. So it was wrong in what he did. I'm just trying to put a different perspective on the situation where you have two brothers who probably fought a lot over the years over many different things. Even you go back to verse 22, it says, but the children struggled together within her. Even in the womb, they battled with each other. So here's a scenario where Jacob feels that he finally has an advantage because it doesn't talk of any other ones. And he hangs Esau's privilege over his head. So at the same time now, we're talking about the character of Jacob, but was he the only one that was wrong in this scenario? So if the birthright were as important as it should have been, would it really be traded for a meal? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if it meant that much. So the way that, and what I mean by this is growing up and thinking about the story, I put the emphasis of Jacob and Esau and him selling his birthright and Jacob taking it as this terrible act. But Esau was so freely willing to give it up as if it didn't mean anything. So, I mean, it takes two in this situation. I don't believe that I would sell it in this situation. It just says he was weary. I don't think, it doesn't say famished. There's other words. I didn't go back and study the Hebrew on this, and maybe I should have. But in that thought, I go, at this point in Esau's life, I'm not sure how old he is, but it's sometime before he turns 40. I would think that he understands enough what the birthright means. And I would also think that it could have been a point of contention between the brothers. Growing up, as it says, they're what's the thing that separates them? The only thing that separates you from your father and his authority is probably just a matter of minutes. The Bible talks about how Isaac favored Esau and Rebekah favored Jacob, so surely this was an obstacle for the two brothers. It would only be human of them to have this back and forth. So at the time of Esau selling his birthright, he had established himself as a skilled hunter, which would allude to his capabilities. I would even think that while he was out hunting, he would have actually taken care of and probably foraged for himself. You would think during those times. To me, it just adds more insight into how much he really didn't care about his birthright. But if Jacob was able to persuade Esau to give away his birthright over a bowl of stew and bread, once again, did he really cherish it to begin with? So then Genesis 25 and 34 says, and Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, and he ate and drank, arose and went his way. And it says, thus Esau despised his birthright. Now, I used to read this to where it was because of what happened, he despised his birthright. But I really think in my mind, this is saying he did it because he despised his birthright. I don't really know for sure. Once again, it goes back to, these are just thoughts on this when it comes to it. Because I've been trying to piece together, why would somebody of Jacob's character be in this situation? So it was after that Esau, when he was 40, he married two Hittite women, to which his parents very much disapproved. So in Genesis 26, 34 and 35, is where it talks about when Esau was 40 years old, he took his wives, Judith, the daughter of Berai the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. I bring this up once again to add character to Jacob because this shows Esau's character. This shows more of his bad choices that he makes. If his parents were a grief of mind to this, you would think that they didn't approve of what he was doing. So now we're starting to show a trend more towards Esau's choices, which would then kind of add more favor towards Jacob's choices in this sense. The next instance of Jacob's character comes into view, which is in where he steals the blessing. Now, I had to go back and read this a couple times, but so this is Genesis chapter 27, 1 through 17. Now it came to pass, when Isaac was old and his eyes were so dim that he could not see, that he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son. And he answered him, here I am. And then he said, behold now, I am old. I do not know the day of my death, Now therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. And make me savory food such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau his son. And Esau went to the field to hunt game and to bring it. So Rebekah spoke to Jacob, her son, saying, "Indeed, I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, 'Bring me game and make savory food for me, that I may eat it and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death.' Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to what I command you. Go now to the flock and bring me from there 2 choice kids of the goats, and I will make savory food from them for your father, such as he loves. Then you shall take it to your father, that he may eat it, and that he may bless you before his death." And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "Look, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him. And I shall bring a curse on myself, and not a blessing." But his mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice, and go, get them for me." And he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the choice clothes of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave the savory food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. So initially with this story, most might say that Jacob's character is deceitful. But to me, as I read this over and over, I looked at it and I went, who's telling him to do this? Look at how Rebekah is the one that is pushing him. So I go back in thinking that you have Esau, who's continually making bad choices, not really what his parents want. And then you have Jacob, who looks like he's obeying his parents. He's obeying his mother in this instance. Remember how the Bible spoke of Rebekah favoring Jacob and Isaac favoring Esau. So surely this is transpiring from more than just a child trying to deceive their father. While it's wrong, this is a display of obedience. This is a child who is looking to his mother for more approval because he's not getting it from somewhere else, and he's following what she says. Definitely a character trait that God expects of us. The obedience aspect, although choose where the obedience would lie, would be the key in this story. So after this, though, in verses 18 through 29, Jacob goes into his father and portrays himself as Esau in order to gain his father's blessing. Backtrack for a second on the aspect with Rebekah, where when Jacob was concerned, he didn't want a curse brought on him. She was very quick to say, "I'll own that." So, I mean, even when he did push back, she's reassuring him, "I got you. You do this. Follow what I'm telling you. Go and do what I'm saying." And that was what I took. I took more from that than I had before, previously in reading these. So, another thought towards this would come from the definition of the birthright, where it was more than the inheritance. Because Esau had given his birthright to his brother, in some ways, Jacob may have even thought that this blessing was owed to him, because that would have been part of it. When it comes to I'm giving my authority, I'm passing on to my son, that could have even been something else to support his thought process. The authority that should have been passed down with the birthright that Esau had already given away. If you think about it that way, then you have to say, was it really deceit, or was it just the final act of what was already owed Jacob to begin with? Like I said, just a thought. It doesn't really explain what happened next, though. In Genesis chapter 27, verses 30 through 40, Esau is livid at what has happened. So it says, "Now it happened as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also made savory food and brought it to his father, and said to his father, 'Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that your soul may bless me.' And his father Isaac said to him, 'Who are you?' So he said, 'I am your son, your firstborn, Esau.' Then Isaac trembled exceedingly and said, 'Who? Where is the one who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate all of it before you came, and I have blessed him, and indeed he shall be blessed.' And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, me also, O my father." You got to think of that relationship that they had. He knows now that that's even gone. But he said, "Your brother came with deceit and has taken away your blessing." And Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and now look, he has taken away my blessing." And he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Then Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Indeed, I have made him your master, and all his brethren I have given to him as servants. With grain and wine I have sustained him. What shall I do now for you, my son?" And Esau said to his father, "Have you only one blessing? Bless me, me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And then Isaac his father answered and said to him, "Behold, your dwelling shall be of the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. It shall come to pass, when you become restless, that you shall break his yoke from your neck." 41 goes on to say, "So Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And he said in his heart, 'The days of mourning for my father are at hand, but then I will kill my brother Jacob.'" The other part to this, as I read this, I had to go back and remember what God told Rebekah, in that he told her, the older will serve the younger. So even though these are things that we know that shouldn't happen in a normal, I'm making good choices world for somebody of good character, it's also something happening because it was already told that it was going to happen already. There was no stopping it. So Jacob is now, let's see, he's livid, he's hurt, he's angry, he's begging his father to still bless him in some way. Isaac came up with something, but it's not nearly as eloquent as the blessing to which he gave Jacob. He's infuriated. Like I said, he wants to kill his brother. So Jacob is now at the forefront of his mother's thoughts. She hears about Esau's intent and fears for him. She doesn't want to be grieving for more than she already has to, and convinces Isaac to send Jacob off to find a wife. Jacob is told that he needs to go to Rebekah's brother, Laban, and take a wife from one of his daughters. So at this time, Isaac also blesses his son, Jacob, and tells him that he needs to go on. And so Jacob leaves. He heads off to his uncle's house. And when Esau finds out that his parents sent Jacob away to find a wife, because they didn't like his choice of wives, what did Esau go and do at this time? He went and found another wife that they didn't like. So he went and found another wife from Canaan this time because it did not please his father. So once again, the reoccurrence of Esau making bad choices and being defiant towards his parents, and Jacob seemingly obedient even though the wrong way, starts to shine through more and more as I read through the story. So while Jacob was on his way to his uncle's house, he was visited by the Lord. So in Genesis 28, verses 13 through 15, it says, "And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you." God's reassuring Jacob, who has done these bad things, but he's right there with him. At the same time, I think about the character of him, I also think that there's hope for all of us in this instance, and God reassures us that no matter what we are doing, as long as we still continue to follow him, he's right there with us, is what this shows to me. So then the next whoops. So how respectful and in awe is his character that he showed faith after this too. Genesis 28, 20 through 22 goes on to say that then Jacob made a vow saying, "If God will be with me and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set as a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you." Now, while this goes against most of what I think, and I think we've talked about before, in that we don't barter with God, I don't bargain with him. In this instance, Jacob is saying, God, you're blessing me, and in turn, this is what I'm doing for you. And I can agree is not the right word. I can see where this is coming from, because Jacob is saying this after God has already approached him. If the other way around is where we typically, I think, fail, and we don't hit that mark, because we will approach God and do hey, God, if you do this for me, then this is what I'll do for you. So this is reversed, and that was something that I saw also in this. So he continued on his journey, and he found Rachel and Laban. He was with Laban a month before he was asked what his wages would be. So this is somebody who shows up at his uncle's house. He's worked for a month. I would think Laban's probably checking him out, making sure he's doing what he's supposed to do. He works for a month, and then finally Laban says, all right, you're gonna work out. So what can I do for you? So he responded that he would serve Laban for 7 years for the hand of Rachel. This is his daughter. Now it's his secondborn, not the firstborn. But it's the daughter that has caught his eye, and he thinks that she's beautiful, and he's willing to work for her. So Laban agrees to this, and Jacob works diligently for the next 7 years. And when the time comes, Laban tricks Jacob and gives him Leah, which is the older sister. Says that, and I don't want to get it wrong, but I probably didn't highlight it like I should have, but it talks to Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. That was the difference. So when the time comes, Laban tricks Jacob, gives him Leah to marry instead of Rachel. And it was at this time that Jacob is told that Laban did it because of tradition. So in other words, when he what have you done to me? Laban he looks at him, he goes, well, it's typically the first daughter or the firstborn, that the elder daughter is the one that marries first. So I did this because it was tradition. However, it's not what was agreed to. Now, I would think the typical person in this instance would be furious. There would be a lot of negative things that would come to it. Instead, when you read about the situation with Jacob and Leah and Rachel, Jacob's reaction is, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Actually, backtrack. It says, Jacob loved Rachel. He said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. In other words, he's trying to make it right. But in that, Laban goes, okay, fine, fulfill the week that you owe because of the marriage, and then after that you can have Rachel also, but you're going to owe me 7 more years. This is someone who he's set his mind to something, and he's also, he doesn't run away with the one daughter. He doesn't leave both of them. He's still sticking around and going to persevere because this is the decision that was made. Number one, his mother has told him this is what you need to go do. Number two, God has told him, I'm going to bless you and this is what's going to happen. And then 3, you have a gentleman who wants to obey both of these people. So there's so many other ways that he could have reacted. But in turn, he chose to earn Laban's trust and his blessing versus a negative route. So not only that, he was willing to work further. So in verse 31 of chapter 29, it says that the Lord saw how Jacob viewed Leah as compared to Rachel. So after they're married, and Jacob was partial to Rachel because that's who he wanted to marry. And because of this, it says the Lord made Rachel barren and opened Leah's womb. So Leah goes on to bear 3 children for Jacob, and in hopes that this will strengthen the bond that they have, because she realizes that she was not his first pick, but hoping that children in the mix will help to strengthen this bond. It was at this time that Rachel envied her sister, but she got it wrong in that she then turns and demands from Jacob, Jacob, give me children. He responds in anger. So this is one of the few times that I had saw in this where he's angry with her. So the Bible says in chapter 30, it says, now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister and said to Jacob, give me children or else I die. And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" I mean, in this instance, so she's blaming Jacob, but Jacob's been giving children to Leah. So I don't know if this is just Rachel's upset with herself. There's a whole scenario here that's another probably conversation. But Jacob, this is when he gets angry, when he's accused of being the one that's withholding children. I found that interesting. But it speaks to his quick-tempered character versus an understanding one at the same time. If he truly understood what she was going through and the fact that he loved her so much, guarantee she loved him, and she couldn't give him children at the time, she's just exploding. And then rather than having empathy with her, he blows up at the same time. So negative interaction on the character for this one. So from this, Rachel says, "You know what, Jacob, you can go in to my maid, Bilhah, who will bear you a child." And this happens. And then this happens again then with Leah, with her maid. So as I read the interactions in chapter 30, it really seems that Jacob becomes callous towards his wives. At this point, he's got 4 of them. And I only say that because there's not a lot of, it's not necessarily intimate reactions between the 2 of them, but there's not a lot of love that's displayed. It's more or less just relationships that are there, and it's almost as if a purpose is served, and I don't understand that. Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah, he's callous that Rachel and Leah are combative with each other because Leah feels as if she has taken her husband due to how Jacob treats her. So Leah's feeling out of the mix because he's so in love with Rachel. Rachel's upset because she couldn't have children. I mean, there's just so many dynamics going on. Leah ends up bearing another son, though, for Jacob, after being bribed by mandrakes, basically from Leah's son Reuben. This type of relationship continues for Jacob and his wives as they each bear children for him, which ultimately become the tribes of Israel. It says, next, Jacob wants to leave Laban, but Laban would prefer for him to stay. And Laban asks what it would take for Jacob to stay, and his response is fair, at least at that time. He could have asked for many things, I'm sure, but he realizes that Laban has been good to him and basically wants to earn whatever he takes. So he proposes a separation of the animals based on color and pattern, to which he assists the breeding in his favor. And he ends up with a strong, healthy flock, whereas Laban ends up with a weaker flock. And Laban's sons see his actions as deceitful and trickery as they become angry. Now, they don't realize, though, that God is helping Jacob in this endeavor. And I say that because God is the one that said, I'm going to bless you. This is what's going to happen. And at this time, the Lord tells Jacob to return to his family to avoid any further strife with Laban's family, because his sons, basically, it's almost a pitchfork mentality, and they're upset because the flock that Laban has that should be strong and healthy and helping them out is not that way. And at this time, Jacob has a flock that makes him look like a very rich man in his region. So Jacob gathers all his wives and his children, along with his livestock, his riches, and he leaves. And it was after he left that Laban pursued him. So during Laban's pursuit, God speaks to Laban in a dream and tells him not to speak neither good nor bad to Jacob. So Laban finally catches up to Jacob and questions him. Basically, why have you left like a thief in the night? Why did you take off? What's going on? Why did you not allow me to tell my daughters goodbye, to tell my sons goodbye, to kiss my children? He also asks, though, why has someone stolen his gods, and that's lowercase gods, from his house? This is where Jacob's faith comes in and his confidence, in my opinion. So in Genesis 31 and 32, it says, Jacob answers Laban and says, because I was afraid, for I said, so this is why he left, perhaps you would take your daughters from me by force. With whomever you find your gods, do not let him live. In the presence of our brethren, identify what I have of yours and take it with you. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So he's questioned about all of this and what happened. He leaves. He says, I was afraid you might try and keep something from me. But his faith in God also comes out and says, you know what? Whoever has your stuff, kill him. I'm fine with that. The story goes on to say that they don't find the gods. Rachel, that actually had them, says she sat on them, and she ends up they don't look underneath her, and she deceives them. And Jacob was then angry afterwards. It says, once nothing was found, he basically laid into Laban. So this confidence that he has, because now he's not at his home. He's journeying somewhere else. He's got God behind him telling him that he should leave. It shows that it's building his confidence. Maybe even some of this anger coming through, and basically tells Laban he needs to let's see. What is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me? Although you have searched all my things, what part of your household things have you found? Set it here before my brethren and your brethren, that they may judge between us both. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes have, and your female goats have not miscarried their young, and I have not eaten the rams of your flock. That which was torn by beasts I didn't bring to you. I bore the loss of it. It says, you required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. In the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night. And my sleep departed from my eyes. Thus I have been in your house 20 years. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock. And you have changed my wages 10 times. Unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night. It's a lot that's coming out of Jacob at this time, and he is laying into Laban about it. Key in this is he has said, unless God had been with him, it wouldn't have happened. So Jacob is still on this journey home after this. Him and Laban and they've made up basically. It says that they, let's see, what is it? Took a stone, see their children, therefore. But they had a witness. You and I, let it be a witness between you and me. They made a covenant between the two of them. So he continues to home where Esau is, and he approaches closer as he begins to fear his brother. So imagine, so he just said 20 years he's been gone. So for 20 years you've not spoken to the brother that you've stolen the birthright from, that you took the blessing from. You've prospered. You've done things. You have no idea what he's been doing and how things are. And now you're heading that way, and it clicks in you. What is my brother going to do to me? And so he worries if Esau will attack him or his family. He prays to God in his fear and asks for God's help. After praying, Jacob readied a gift for his brother. Genesis 32:13 through 21 talks about, so he lodged there that same night. This is where he stops before going the rest of the way for where Esau is, and took what came to his hand as a present for Esau his brother, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 foals. Then he delivered them to the hand of his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, pass over before me, put some distance between successive droves. And he commanded the first one, saying, when Esau my brother meets you and asks you, saying, to whom do you belong and where are you going? Whose are these in front of you? Then you shall say, they are your servant Jacob's. It is a present sent to my lord Esau, and behold, he also is behind us. So he commanded the second, the third, and all who followed the drove, saying, in this manner you shall speak to Esau when you find him. And also say, behold, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present went on before him, but he himself lodged that night in the camp. To me, it speaks to his humility. It speaks to his remorse. It speaks to other things with his character that, number one, he's telling them, send all of this to my brother, but when you meet him, tell them they come from his servant. So he's not putting himself above his brother. Even though he knows the birthright and the blessing, that's where he stands in stature, but he's still putting him at his brother's feet. So he stays behind, and it was at this time that, and it says it says he wrestled with God. So in Genesis 32:24 through 31, it says, and he arose that night, 24, sorry. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked, saying, "Tell me your name, I pray." And he said, "Why is it that you ask about my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Just as he crossed over Peniel, the sun rose on him, and he limped on his hip. What kind of a person wrestles with God? I would say that Jacob didn't have any idea that this was someone other than a man, but either way, this shows, it goes back to his confidence. It shows his strength. When you go back to the verse, what did it say? When God was talking to Rebekah, one people shall be stronger than the other. This is showing the strength of Jacob. His stamina, whatever you want to call it. Wrestling is exhausting. For anybody that's never done it, I try it if you may, but it is exhausting to lock with somebody, and it takes everything you have, anything more than a minute if you're truly locked at it, and you're done. So this says they did it all night. I can't imagine. So I'm sure, though, that Jacob was full of himself at this point in his journey and probably needed to be humbled at the same time. So while he's done this stuff for Esau and he shows his humility, then this happens. And I read one instance that talked about that this is also just another way of God trying to humble Jacob before he interacts with his brother. So chapter 33 speaks to the reunification of Jacob and his brother Esau. And when they meet, it says Esau ran to meet him, he embraced him, fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept together. Before that, it says Jacob crosses over before them and bows himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. This is 2 brothers quickly trying to get to each other. 20 years have passed. And you got one that's bowing to the other one, and the other one that's running so he can embrace him and pick him up. Kind of alludes to the parable of the prodigal son almost, as this is the prodigal brother. He tries. Jacob calls himself a servant to Esau. He tells him, he shows that he knows that he's wronged him. He tries to give Esau the gifts. But Esau tells Jacob that he has enough and that God has blessed him. Jacob talks him into it. Esau takes Jacob's gift. There's so many stories about Jacob and his children and his inhabitants. It all comes down to, there's many conversations with God throughout all of this where he's looking out for Jacob. He's ensuring his safety and the safety of those connected to him. And so when I finished going through all of this, the character traits that I ended up with, and I wanted to go over for a second, was number 1, tenacious. And when faced with a problem, you don't give up until you find the answer. Confident. He traded stew for a birthright. I mean, number 1, you watch any of the shows where you trade, you start with a penny and I'm going to work my way up to a house. This is a guy who traded a bowl of stew for a birthright. That's pretty confident. He had many other encounters that showed confidence. Optimistic, other than the encounter with Rachel where she says that he needs to give her a child, he seems rather level-headed most of the time, and he talks through. He's thinking of positive things, positive outcomes. He's looking long-term. He's self-aware. He's observant of his behavior and the situation that's going on around him. He's adaptable. When the first wife wasn't who she was supposed to be, all right, what do I have to do for the next one? The same can be said for the amount of times that he moved. For those that haven't moved a lot in your life, it's stressful. He did it a lot. He is flexible, reliable. Laban learned that he was someone he could count on and trust. It says before he left, when he asked about leaving, Laban didn't want him to go. You would not want someone to stay if they weren't reliable to you. Fair. He tried to do what was right for each given situation. I believe he was a hard worker. It goes back to, like he said, he increased the flocks. He increased the herds for Laban. He had to have been a hard worker. I say he takes responsibility based on how he interacts with Esau in the end. He tells him, and he's sorry. He's remorseful. When you make a misstep, you own it. He owned his faults. He's in control of his actions and emotions. He maintained a level of self-control through all of these different encounters. Parents, siblings, wives, other countries' people, minus the issue with Rachel demanding a child. For the most part, he really shows he's level-headed. He's unafraid to speak up, navigates upsets with grace, willing to take the risk, committed to long-term goals, ready for the unexpected, prioritizes health and well-being. That was even part of when he was traveling back, as he told Esau, I can't travel right now because the herd will die, other things. He's an intelligent person. So after going through all of this, when I think of the character of Jacob, I no longer just think of the Jacob and Esau instance. I think of somebody who basically was groomed and was set into a position, and God blessed in many ways. And even though there's situations we may encounter that we don't understand, as long as we lean on God through all of these, Jacob shows us that we can prosper. So that's what I have for Jacob.